This is the Inclusion Think Tank podcast. We began the podcast with the intention to focus on inclusive education, why it works, and how to make it happen. In the years since we premiered the podcast, we have released over 60 episodes. Before we began, through research, we found that the average commute time for New Jersey residents was around 30 minutes. With that in mind, we aim to keep every episode within that time length. Our guests on the episodes have included inclusion facilitators from All In for Inclusive Education, school administrators, and educators from the preschool through college level, parent advocates, and self-advocates. We also had episodes that included others who work in the world of education who are striving to make inclusive education a reality for all students. I am sad to say that today marks the last episode of the Inclusion Think Tank podcast. As someone who has lived with a disability my whole life, I have been passionate about topics and policies that impact those in the disability community. I am a strong believer in that we can begin to change things when we are intentional about having conversations, the sometimes difficult conversations. Through this podcast, I have increased my own knowledge about the topic of inclusive education and how it impacts our educational system here in New Jersey, and how educators and advocates are working toward making sure that all students have access to education. I would like to thank all of our guests who have been on the podcast, to the educators and administrators, inclusion facilitators, and others who are in schools doing the work to make a better inclusive school environment for all students. Your work is so important, and thank you for sharing your experience and your stories here on the podcast. On this episode, we decided to flip the script a little bit. I became the guest on the podcast, and I will be interviewed by All In for Inclusive Education's Executive Director, Michele Gardner. We discuss what I am up to in my life outside of hosting this podcast, my favorite moments from the Inclusion Think Tank podcast, and what is next for me. This episode is not a goodbye, it is definitely a stay tuned, and we'll see you soon. I would like to welcome everyone back to a new episode of the Inclusion Think Tank podcast. I am your host, Arthur Aston, and actually, today I am not your host. I am the guest on this podcast, and your host will be All In's Executive Director, Michele Gardner. So, Michele, welcome to the podcast, and
Thank
I'm
you.
actually looking forward to being a guest for once.
I'm so excited to kind of flip the script here and be
Yes,
interviewing you, Arthur. It's something that I've been hoping we do for a long time. 'Cause
yes.
I think it's fun to see the other side of Arthur.
Yes, yes, I'm really excited. So I will turn over the hosting duties to you and we can get started.
All right.
Yes,
Well, Arthur,
yes,
I know that you wear many hats in your life, and I'm hoping that you can share with our audience some of the other work that you do outside of hosting the Inclusion Tank podcast for All In.
yes. So I am usually your host, Arthur Aston, and I have a few hats that I wear outside of my hosting duties here at All In. One of them is that I'm executive director of a nonprofit called Our View. That's OurView. And with that nonprofit, we focus on a lot of different things. So the nonprofit is the name is new because over the summer we transitioned from our old name, which was Build Jake's Place, where we focused on inclusive play and inclusive playgrounds. And under that name, our organization built two inclusive playgrounds, one in Burlington County and one in Camden County here in New Jersey. And since then, we have had a law passed called Jake's Law in New Jersey that allows for counties and townships to apply for Green Acres grant funding through the state to build new inclusive playgrounds. And because of that law, 97 new playgrounds will be built in the state of New Jersey coming soon.
Impressive.
Yes, yeah, so it's really exciting to hear that. And because of that, our co-founders of Build Jake's Place, they felt that their mission was accomplished for what they set out to do, which was to honor their grandson with his memory with an inclusive playground near the town where he grew up. And with 97 new playgrounds coming, they felt like they have accomplished that mission and so much more. So we transitioned to the name of Our View, where we will continue to advocate for inclusive play. It's so important. Even though the money is there to build these playgrounds, it is so important to still get out into the communities to let the community know that these playgrounds are coming. Because if they
Yeah.
don't know they're coming, they won't use them.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Takes a little
so we
advertising.
absolutely. So that's part of my job there with Our View. We also have a Miracle League, which is a baseball league for children and adults with disabilities, ages 5 and older. It includes adults that are in their 50s and 60s. There is no age cap. So anyone of any age over the age of 5 is able to play. We run a season twice a year for 6 weeks in the fall and 8 weeks in the spring. We just started, we're recording this on September 8th. We just started our fall season this weekend. So we're back and fully running with almost 80 registered players this season. And
Wow.
yeah, looking forward to the next 6 weeks. It rained yesterday, so our Sunday games were canceled, but we play on Saturdays and Sunday mornings. And in addition to this podcast, I also have Our View, the podcast, where that podcast focuses on a broader range of topics related to disabilities. So
Mm.
I my guests there are most often guests who have disabilities of their own, so they share their stories and what they're up to in life. And the main focus of Our View, the mission, is to educate, raise awareness, and change the tone of conversation about disabilities, to make disability not a bad word,
Yeah.
to show society and the world at large that people with disabilities are out in the world. We're doing things, we're living life and going to, well, I'm going to concerts, I'll say. And yeah,
But community members,
yes,
everything that everyone else is involved in. I think people sometimes need a reminder of that.
yes, yes. And you will see us everywhere in your grocery stores, your malls, and movie theaters and restaurants.
Mhm.
And just to bring that awareness that we are here and that we deserve, everything that everybody else gets, which is, things, events, and opportunities that are inclusive and accessible to us, no matter
Yeah,
what our disabilities
accessibility is
might be.
probably a big piece of that is accessibility,
Yes.
which is one of the parts of Our View and building those playgrounds. Arthur, how do people get involved? How do they, learn more information about the league or Our View and the playgrounds?
Yes, so we have our website is the easiest way to find out more information, and there's also a contact me section where it will send me an email, and our website is www.our-view.com. There's also information there about the Miracle League. Again, we have 2 seasons, so although our registration is closed now for the spring, for the fall, registration will open again after the new year for our spring season. So, and volunteering with our Miracle League is also a big thing. Every player is matched with a buddy, we call them. So it's a great way, again, for inclusion to bring people with disabilities who play along with people without disabilities who volunteer as their buddies. It's a great learning opportunity and a great experience for everybody.
That's amazing. And that's
Yeah,
amazing work you're doing and
thank you.
bringing not only awareness, but also accessibility to local communities in New Jersey. I think, when we are a person without a disability, we are not necessarily aware of the really innumerable barriers that are in place in every
Yes.
community. And, one of the best ways to become more aware is to become involved in organizations like the ones that you work for. So I thank you for all of that work that you're doing.
Thank
Um,
you. I just my biggest thing is I'm big on educating. There are 2 ways you can approach like inaccessibility, and that's, people go for the shaming
yeah,
route, to
yeah,
shame people and, to blast it out on social media. Look what happened here. I always like to take the approach of educating because it's like you don't know what you don't know.
yeah,
And so
absolutely.
Yeah, and so it's great to be able to have the opportunity to educate and help make changes from that end of things.
Yeah, and I think when you approach it from an education standpoint, it's going to have more of an impact, and it's going to be more
Mhm.
sustainable
Yes.
than sort of going on the shaming or the attack route when people don't know what they don't know, and we see that in schools at all in,
Yes.
and you're seeing that kind of in the broader community. Um, so, thinking about the Inclusion Think Tank podcast, Arthur, that has meant a lot to me. What has it meant to you, and how does it connect to your life and your lived experience?
For me, growing up, I have a disability myself. I was born with spina bifida. I don't think I mentioned that in this episode, but in other episodes I have. So I walk with leg braces and crutches, and oftentimes I do use a wheelchair for long distances or, uh, for safety issues. If it's outside and for sidewalks that might not be too accessible or have cracks and dips in them, it's easier for me to use my wheelchair. But I've lived with my disability my whole life, and throughout my entire school experience, I was always in the general education setting. So I didn't have the experience of, being separated into, a special education classroom or just in a classroom with only other students who had disabilities. So although I was aware that those classrooms existed, it wasn't my personal experience. So
Yeah.
hosting over 60 episodes of this podcast, which was hard to believe that it's been 60 episodes. I'm like, wow, I
Yeah.
have I've really learned so much, and we've had educators on here, we've had self-advocates and parent advocates as guests, and just to hear everybody's stories that really bring the reality of what the fight has been for inclusive education here in the state of New Jersey and around the country has really opened my eyes to a whole lot.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. And when you think about those 60 podcast episodes that you've recorded, which is
Yeah.
also unreal that there's been that many,
Yeah.
what are some of the most common misconceptions or stereotypes about inclusive education that have been addressed during your sessions with a wide range of people?
I would say one of the top things is that to make a school setting inclusive, that it costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
And that it takes a lot. Yes, it does take a lot of work. It doesn't happen overnight, but a lot of small things that don't cost a lot of money can be done to
Yeah.
help, to help this along the way. I think that's a big misconception and stereotype, and I think it can be scary for people to approach because of they have those thoughts that oh, it's going to cost so much money to do this, but so many little things can be done, um, in individual classrooms or in individual schools, maybe not through the whole district, but uh, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so it's it does take time and it doesn't happen overnight. But I think that's one thing that a lot of people have brought up.
Yeah.
And even through their examples of what they're doing in their own schools, it made me think like, oh, that didn't cost them any money to
Right,
do
right. And
that.
sometimes it's just rethinking resources, right?
Yes,
Rethinking how you're using all of the resources you already have as a school district and really committing to the change and figuring out how can I now use those resources in a different way.
yes,
I always say one of the cheapest parts of sort of systemic change is mindset change. And it costs you nothing
right,
necessarily, but it's also one of the hardest things to change. And sometimes that can be the initial barrier of like, whew, how do we change how people think about inclusive education? And really, that is the starting point, and it's also the starting point that probably isn't going to cost you a whole lot of money.
right.
So, thinking back to your episodes, what's one or two of your favorite episodes or other memorable moments that you have recorded on the podcast over the last few years?
I've been thinking about that question since we were putting this episode together.
Sorry.
And it's yes, and it's a great question and it's so difficult to answer. I think for me, just having these conversations with everyone, whether they were parent advocates or self-advocates or educators, it made me it made me reflect on my own personal life.
Yeah.
And hearing from the parent advocates, it made me think of my parents,
Yeah.
and how they fought for, making sure that I had the right things when I was in school. Being a self-advocate, it made me think of myself where I thankfully, was able to speak up for myself when things weren't going the right way. And um, having educators on made me think of the educators I had in my life, some of who are still in my life today. It's our health teacher from my elementary school, she was our school nurse. She's still in my life today, and I'm 43 years old. Like, it's amazing to think, that someone, has been in my life since I was 4 or 5 years old when I started kindergarten. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just thinking of, uh, again, just hearing different stories that they would bring up, and I could reflect on, uh, something that happened to me in school. And I always say that math was not my favorite subject. It was a little difficult for me. So
You and me
having,
both.
yeah, so having some math teachers on as guests and hearing how they run their class, I'm like, wow, if I, had a teacher that did something like that, it would have been a
Yeah.
lot easier for me.
Yeah.
And so uh, to hear how things have changed and are improving, and the work that everybody is doing, I think, in just about every episode, I think I could find something that I liked that somebody said, and
Yeah.
or the work that they're doing to help make this change happen is, all of my favorite things.
Would you agree, Arthur, that even or maybe even often people with disabilities don't even realize how high they should be holding that bar for schools, for their community, for the expectations that they should have in terms of accessibility and flexibility and inclusion. And that a podcast like this or the other podcasts that you run can help them, give them a sense of what I should expect from the world for me.
Yes, absolutely. My experience of living with the disability, again, at 43 years old, I won't say nothing, but there have been a lot of times where I've had to pivot
Yeah,
in life in general,
yeah,
and things have not gone the way that they were supposed to go, uh, related to my disability. And so I think that for me, at times, not so much anymore, but when I was younger, for sure,
mhm,
in high school and maybe even in my college years, in my early 20s, it it did make me settle for things that I most likely should not have settled for.
yeah,
Just because all right, we'll get through it. We get through
yeah,
everything else. We'll
yeah. That
make it
makes
work.
sense.
Yeah, we'll make it work. And this is not the first, time that I've had to change, my initial course, my initial plan.
Yeah,
Which can be a good thing, being able to pivot in certain
sure.
ways at certain
Mhm.
times. But again, allowing myself to settle for something that I should have never let
Yeah,
happen.
yeah. Like maybe that
Where
environment or that system should have been pivoting and adapting.
yes,
Yeah,
yes. So,
yeah,
for example, I can remember, again, having conversations brings up memories. I can remember being in school, and because I used my crutches to walk, but I used a wheelchair in high school because the school was so crowded with other students, it was just easier and safer for me to get around. But all of the science classes were upstairs on the second floor. So I had one of the hall monitors watch me walk up the steps, and, they brought my chair up, and then at the end of class, they brought it back down instead of making them move one of the classrooms downstairs because the
yes,
school didn't have an elevator.
yeah, yeah,
But it wasn't a big deal. Oh, I can walk up steps, so I'll walk up steps. I'll leave my class early so I can get to the other one
yeah,
on time.
yeah.
And again, that just should not have happened. Shouldn't have been on me. It should have been on the school to figure that out. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and to say, okay, here's what we'll do.
Yeah.
Um, so like that's just one example where, and to me at the time, I didn't mind because I'm like, oh, I can walk up the steps. I walk up steps all the time. It's no big deal.
Right.
But now as an adult, I can see that other things could have been done to make it better and easier for me to
Yeah.
more accommodating for me to
Right.
make
Right.
it to that class somewhere down on the first floor.
Right. And not missing instruction in the other
Right,
class or missing instruction in that class to get back down the stairs, or also even relying on another student or another adult in
right.
order to do that. If the class was on the first floor, you wouldn't have needed that support. And I think sometimes we get a little mixed up about especially in the world of education, about the level of support that students need. And sometimes that level of support is because of the system or the environment rather than what the person with a disability actually needs. And it's important that we keep having conversations about the difference between those two things.
Yes. Yes.
So, that kind of leads us into the to my next question is, based on your experience of hosting the podcast, if you were to envision a sort of a perfect public school system for students with disabilities, what would it look like? What are some components of that?
So I think like the perfect school for me is number one, a place where the students with disabilities and their families are involved in the conversations that are
Yeah.
happening about them. I think that's a huge thing that doesn't always happen. It should always happen, but it's not always the case. Um, and if the family or the person themselves is not able, they should have someone as an advocate that is there to represent them to make sure that that their needs are being met because you can have five people with the same disability and they all have different needs.
Yeah.
And um I think that's a top priority for me and just to make sure everybody is included and to
Yeah.
have a place where students with and without disabilities can um, be together.
Mm-hmm.
Just being
Hmm.
together and learning from each other
Yeah.
is such an important thing. I mentioned that math wasn't my strong subject, and it wasn't always the teacher that helped make the subject make sense. It was sometimes the other students in the
Yeah.
class that
Yeah.
helped make
Yeah.
the subject make sense. And it's like, they would tell me like, okay, you almost have it, but think of it this way,
Yeah.
or think of it from this perspective. And it's like, okay, now that makes sense.
Yeah. Just having another perspective.
Having another perspective on somebody who is, closer to my age, who thinks similarly to how
Mhm.
I think. Um, so just having that experience. I remember
Mhm.
someone a guest on the podcast, I forget who it was, but saying how um, you know, in schools they often want to separate the students with disabilities from everyone else, but then when they get outside of the school, whether it be on the weekend or after everybody graduates high school, they want all of us to mix in together and mix and mingle together. But then, because we were separated from everybody, nobody knows how to do that.
Right?
So yeah, so we have to make sure that a school is an inclusive place where everybody is able to be together and just learn from each other. I think that is really
Yeah.
important. And then, as always, like I said, listening to the voices of those with the disabilities because they know better than anyone else what it is that they need.
Yeah. And you mentioned what we do in schools versus what we do outside of schools. And I think that we can forget that our schools are really a microcosm of society. And we don't have resource rooms and self-contained programs and special subject classes out in society and in the community and in the adult world. And so it's very interesting, I think, that we do have all of these separate spaces for students with disabilities in our schools still today, when the reality is we know that the thing that creates that authentic sense of membership and belonging for people with disabilities is having these inclusive experiences right from the get-go and throughout their public school experience. And we also know they're better equipped to be a part of society, and society is better equipped to be among that diversity when we have inclusive schools. So, it's so important. And I think you've really represented that well through the questions in the podcast episodes and the guests that you've brought in. You've been able to have all of these voices be a part of that. And now that it's been announced that the Inclusion Think Tank podcast is ending, at least in its current version, tell us what's next for Arthur Aston.
Oh, wow.
Your audience wants to know, Arthur.
Yes, yes, they do. I'm excited for what is to come for me. As I mentioned with your first question, being executive director of Our View is something that I will be focusing all of my time on, running the baseball league and all of the advocacy work that we're doing there. Uh, and something else I'm very excited about is continuing Our View, the podcast, because Our View and All In are continuing these conversations through the podcast, the Our View podcast. We will be having guests on once a month that will be talking about discussing topics related to inclusion and inclusive education. And I really believe, I mentioned this in my intro for this episode, I believe that change is made when we are able to have these conversations, no matter how difficult they may be sometimes. May have, have to share some things that we don't like to hear. But that's how change is made. So being able to continue these conversations about inclusive education through Our View, the podcast, is something I'm really excited for and really looking forward to. And I thank you and Fred for having that discussion with me and allowing this to happen. So I'm really excited to uh, continue in a different form, but keep these conversations going because there's a lot more work to do and a lot more stories to share, and they definitely all need to be heard.
You do, and I'm excited for us to be able to be a part of that kind of bigger conversation. While our, niche is inclusive education, inclusive education is only one part of
Right.
advocacy and standing together with people with disabilities to change the world, quite frankly. And I think that the work is more important than ever. And so I'm excited that this will be just a new iteration
Yes.
in a different way, and that we can join and support our view.
Yes, I'm really excited and I thank you and Fred and everyone there at All In. I have had the most wonderful time with you all at the conferences. It's been really interesting and really great being able to talk to people at the conferences and them saying, "Wait, I know your voice from somewhere," and finding out they listen to the podcast.
Yeah,
That has
yeah. Well,
happened so many
and
times.
we value you so much, Arthur, and I'm glad that we'll all be able to still stay connected and
Yes.
continue sort of this journey together in a slightly different way,
Yeah.
because you're a gem that
Oh,
we've
thank you.
really had the honor of working with and knowing, and being able to learn from you. That's been
Yes.
a big part for all of us too, is learning from you and learning from all of the guests that you've invited into the podcast. So I guess this is really to be continued.
Yes, yes, that is. It's stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Yes. Yeah, thank you so much. It's
Oh,
this has been a great conversation with you and being able to share my story and my experiences and uh what I've gained from the podcast. This has been great.
well, thank you, Arthur, and thank you everybody for always tuning into Arthur, and it's really been a wonderful experience for us as well.
Yes, yes. So as we said, this is not the end of the podcast. It's this form of the podcast, but there is more to come. So stay tuned, and we will be making announcements about when those episodes on the Our View podcast will be premiering, and there's more conversations to be had, more stories to be told. Thank you so much for listening to the Inclusion Think Tank podcast. We appreciate your support and the time you have spent with us. Starting in January 2026, be sure to join us on the second Tuesday of every month for a brand new episode of Our View, the podcast, where we'll continue these important conversations about inclusive education. In the meantime, make sure you're following All In for Inclusive Education on all social media platforms to stay connected. And don't forget to subscribe to Our View, the podcast, wherever you listen so you never miss an episode. Until next time, thank you for being part of this journey toward greater inclusion.